Lakshmi, I think we can begin.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Restart Live. This is all about real conversations and real challenges. And I'm Lakshmi Pratury on behalf of everyone in Restart India. You'll hear from everybody else in a few minutes. We want to thank you for joining us today. I'll give a brief introduction of Restart India is and who we have, and then I'll hand it over to my co-host Tina so she can tell you what we're doing. Restart India is something that we started as a way to connect with you. And we said that in India, there are so many people who are small entrepreneurs, small businesses, medium businesses. And what are their challenges? What are the things that are in their mind? We really wanted to connect with that. So it's our way of connecting with you. And we said initially as a starting point, we'll set up a website where you can come and ask questions and we'll give the answers. And as part of that, we started this series so that you can ask questions live. You can listen to experts from all walks of life and ask the questions. And we really want you to feel that this is your community, you're close to us. You can ask anything you want related to your business and opportunities or challenges or whatever. And we have experts who can answer these questions. And as I said, this talk series is an extension of that conversation. And the aim of this is to bring experts from different disciplines to come and talk to you about any questions you have. Until now, we've discussed retail sector, we've discussed food production and farming, digital transformation for small businesses, and the idea is to keep it across different disciplines so that any of you can will find a relevant topic to ask questions. So we want to address in these conversations about what are some challenges you're having and what are the opportunities that can come out of it. Because when there's a problem, either we can deal with it or complain about it. So all of us who are here obviously are there with a positive attitude, so we want to deal with it. So how do we fill the gaps, answer the questions? What are some positive ideas that can come out of this? That's really the purpose of Restart India. My co-host today is Tina Muthoot. As you know, this is Restart India is a collaboration between Muthoot, FinCorp, and Inc. Talks. So Tina is from the Muthoot side of the family, and she represents the next generation of Muthoot leaders. This company has been around for over, 1.5 centuries, and it's a tradition she's carrying on in the fourth generation. And her inclination for social projects and social projects with technology that can do good. All these things put together made her a natural choice to lead Restart India initiative. And so I am the founder of Inc. And we at Inc., all of us are very, very excited to partner with Muthoot FinCorp to do something about the small, medium entrepreneurs and serving. We can say it's about the bottom of the pyramid, but really I would say it's the foundation of any society is, everybody who's from the bottom to the middle. If that foundation is not strong, everything crumbles. So this is really about that foundation. And I'd love to have Tina step in and talk a little bit about Restart India and start the program.
Thanks, Lakshmi, for that overwhelming introduction. Thanks to you and the Inc. team for the selfless and wholehearted commitment that you're extending to this initiative. Good evening, everyone who's joined and who's watching us live. So, Restart India was conceptualized as a means to assist small businesses, the nano entrepreneurs post COVID, to address the challenges that they've been facing and adjusting to all the changes around them over the last many months. And we have, as part of our Restart India advisory, a formidable mentor panel with a combined experience of many decades and from various industries and disciplines to guide and mentor small businesses. So if you ask me, what is so special about small businesses? A small business could be dealing in a product that is so standardized, so common, but their service standards set them apart. they can be right at your doorstep. They can cross the road and deliver their goods to you in a matter of a few minutes. And they're highly responsive to the neighborhood that they're in, and they're so reliable. So that's why Restart India aims to give these small businesses an identity that they haven't even realized that they have. And what's more, Restart India is also a shout out to the citizens of India to help them understand how COVID has impacted various sectors and what we as a community can do to make the most of this evolving environment, whether it be in sectors such as retail, agriculture, and even education, which is the focus of today's conversation. One of the ways that we connect with you is through our live events. And we are working on other projects to help small businesses go digital and giving them a sense of identity, access to resources. But as I speak, we've just scratched the surface with this humble beginning. But we're looking forward to all the work that Muthoot and Inc. can do together as part of these projects. Over to you, Lakshmi, to introduce the event and Pranav, and I'll go over to introduce Gloria after that.
Sure. Thanks, Tina. As you were saying, as I also said, these are just the initial steps, and we have a great mentor panel, experts who can share with you what they have spent years developing. So it's a great way for us to exchange, and you'll get as much out of it as you want to ask and you want to put in. So we really encourage you to be very interactive, type your questions, etc. So the topic today, as Tina was alluding to, is education. Actually, education is one field that hasn't changed in the last 2 centuries, and it's going to change at an exponential pace right now. It's not just about getting a degree. Education is not just about that. It's about learning. It's about skill development. Are you able to solve a problem? Are you able to operate in this digital world? So because of the lockdown, in some ways, I think the education sector is going to transform and actually accelerate at a very different pace. If you think about it, whether it's board exams or admissions or entrance tests, all these have gone up for a toss. Some of them are saying we'll just do whatever the grade the teacher says, and some of them are saying, don't come to school yet. We'll do everything virtually. So lots of things are changing all at the same time. The way you're being educated, the way you're being evaluated, the way you have to learn, the way teachers have to teach, everything is changing, So we really believe that the structure of schools, the way it is right now, is the first thing that's going to change a lot with this online learning, etc. So while we have the online platforms, we have all these things going on, etc., it's just India as well as the world is facing a huge crisis because we've been, as I said, for 2 centuries, education system has not changed. So we've been teaching a certain way, we've been interacting a certain way, and now suddenly everything, thanks to COVID-19, everything has gone for a toss, and we are questioning, do we need to have these large buildings? Do we need to have these large campuses? And how do we adopt digital measures? Do we let the kids come back to the campus or not? If they come back, how will they live? And there's just so many questions. None of us know all the answers. And it has also made, this has been already happening in the industry, and I think this has accelerated it, is that there's a lot of questions about what's needed for my job. It's been actually proven for the last more than a decade that, for example, if the number of engineers we are producing are not ready to go in the job market yet, they're not job ready. They're degree ready, but they're not job ready. And most of the large companies retrain them after they take them. So reskilling is a very, very important part of it, especially in this, with this dynamics of pandemics, etc. You need to reskill yourself. You need to know what's needed and get ready for it very, very quickly. So I think, and at the same time, probably your education and your health are 2 things that are forever growing businesses, pandemic or not, problems or not, these are the two fundamental rights everybody wants to have, and ability to be educated and ability to have good health. So today we're going to focus on education. So I thought at this point I'll introduce our mentors. I'll introduce one of them, and then Tina will introduce the other. Pranav Kothari is somebody I've known for a few years. He's the head of a large-scale education programs division at Education Initiative. More importantly, he's somebody who works with the students. It's not just about, he's the one who's telling us all the time about, it's not about the technology or what's on the screen, it's how the students learn it. So assessing the students, how are they learning, and are they, there is a lot of adaptive learning tools. So are they learning as they go? How do we make it easy for them? And not just in English, but in vernacular languages, government schools, regular schools. How do you make sure everybody is learning? So, Pranav is one of those people who has an amazing educational background and chose to come back to India to work in this sector, which is really the welcome trend today. So he did his MBA from Harvard Business School, and his main focus has been about improving the learning outcomes from children, as I was mentioning earlier, and especially from low-income groups. So if we want to bring digital equality, how do we use technology to get to the lowest income group? And that's really what Pranav is really passionate about. He's also an Inc. Fellow, which is a very tough, gathering out of thousands of applications. We pick 20 people. So he's one of the Inc. Fellows. And he spoke on various platforms about how can we revolutionize K through 12 education. And the way we should all look at it is that right now, COVID-19 has given an opportunity for us to do it not in a hurry, but quickly, so we can all learn much, much better. It's not a bad thing, it's a great thing. So he's also an alumnus of Georgia Institute of Technology, and he previously worked with GTA Capital, Boston Consulting Group, and before he and HBS, he's worked, as I said, with Boston Consulting Group. And I just want to say that, when you see someone like Pranav, who's worked in USA, Germany, Chile, Argentina, studied in HBS, all this stuff, and saying, hey, I want to come back and apply this to India, it's good for Indian children that you're back, Pranav. So welcome. So Tina, I'll let you introduce Gloria and another amazing person we have on the panel today.
Thanks, Lakshmi. So Gloria Benny, a close friend, but I'll really introduce her as a social entrepreneur who's set up two large not-for-profit organizations that work to transform the quality of childcare provided by childcare institutions across the country through community-based programs. Now, if I speak about Gloria, well, she's a TEDx speaker. Then she has received both national and international recognition for her work. She met and received she received special recognition and mention during Michelle Obama's visit to India in November 2010, and in 2014 she was selected to represent India at the launch of the Queen's Young Leaders Program, and in 2016 she was recognized as by Outlook Business as an unconventional entrepreneur under their Outstanding Women series. And I know that Gloria's got a lot to speak about transforming the quality of childcare in India. So welcome, Gloria. And I'm really humbled to say that, we're friends. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Tina. Yeah.
So Gloria, I'll just start off with asking the questions to you first.
Sure.
We're so used to these traditional methods of learning, and we're switching to digital alternatives. How do you think this has impacted the education and learning sector?
Yeah, so I think this is, in my opinion, I think the education sector has been at the brink of a disruption for a long time now. And there has been a lot of innovation that's happened in the space already. It is just possibly that it took a pandemic like this for those conversations to be mainstream now, with obviously the traditional methods of going to school not being possible, and a lot of the methods going online and going digital. So one, I think that this was just it was bound to happen, but just that the pandemic has really improved the pace at which this change is happening in the education sector. I mean, there are obviously pros and cons, right? The traditional method had its benefits of going to school for children. The social interaction is a key part of their growth. Meeting friends and that interaction of going to and spending so many hours in a learning institution is crucial. But at the same time, as I was thinking about what are the different things that's actually picking up now that digital and alternative learning methods is coming up. One was basically, I think, is democratization of teaching. I'm seeing a lot of channels coming up where people who are teachers, or even just individuals who know a lot about a specific topic, is actually coming up and putting out content, and great quality content that would not have really otherwise have been accessible to anyone. Interestingly, I even the last few days came across YouTube channels that are being created by young kids on JavaScripts and coding, etc., which is actually, I think it's really cool, given the fact that young children get to learn from peers on a certain topic. So I think one of the great things about what's going on right now is actually democratization of teaching, and just generally teachers. Anyone who knows about a certain topic is now able to talk about it, and you have access to great quality content through digital resources. Second, and I think this is basically something that a lot of educators have pointed to being super important, which is self-paced learning. That in a classroom structure, there are limitations to how much you could customize for each child, and I'm sure Pranav would have a lot to talk about that. And those are one of the limitations of having one teacher to 30 or 60 students, is that individual and or self-paced learning, where a child can learn at his or her own pace, was very difficult to deliver. Now, with a lot of the teaching going digital, and a lot of and digital obviously makes it easier to track some of this information. Teachers have access to a lot more data on each child, which means that I can actually deliver better teaching techniques, or cater to each child separately. So I think it's a great time for education sector overall, I feel, and possibly at the end of this phase, it's a bit like what Lakshmi said. All the coins have just been tossed up, and it'll probably land up in a manner that is much better, and a hybrid model of we have the best of the old school structure melded into what the digital alternatives is going to give our children. So yeah, it's quite exciting.
It's so good to hear your positivity, Gloria, here. Because people have so many doubts about education. So I'm glad that you're busting that.
And also to continue on that thought, actually, Pranav, while schools have been closed, we've been having online things. Now, slowly, schools and colleges are opening a little bit. Do you think even after they open, or the way they are right now, if we want to leapfrog the legacy systems and create an amazing learning system in India, etc., what are some things we should do in the education space that'll be very different from the unlock, whether they get the kids in phased approach or all at once or whatever? World has changed. So what should the education institutions do differently?
One of the things before lockdown, there was this model where you would treat children in homogeneous batches, right? So if you were born and you are today 12 years of age, you would be in the 6th standard classroom. That's the only criteria for you to be in the 6th standard. Now, even if there are 40 such students who were all born, exactly 12 years ago, are at very different learning levels, then you would still essentially be teaching them all the same thing. Not only this, in government schools and also in other low-income private schools, children are substantially behind. The average sixth grader is only at the third grade equivalent learning level. But the teacher's mandate is to finish the sixth standard syllabus, right? So what she does is she opens the sixth standard textbook. She essentially writes a problem on the blackboard. She's asking students to read out the story from the sixth standard textbook. Right? And actually, her boss, who's a district coordinator or the headmaster, is just asking her or him, what percentage of the textbook have you finished? How much of the syllabus have you completed? Now, in this setting, a large number of students aren't really learning from this mechanism. And I think when schools reopen, I think everybody would benefit by, first of all, just checking where the students are, like what is it that they know and what is it that they need to learn next, right? And in some ways, pause on this mad rush to finish the syllabus. So I think that's the education side. And I think also the fact that a school is actually a safe place for a lot of students, right? They may not have a very conducive environment at home. There may be violence of multiple times, or there may be neglect of multiple types. So I think as schools are reopening, prioritizing safety and prioritizing the teachers, love and the relationship with children to make sure that they feel welcome to come back to the school. I think children will be excited to come to school after such a long time, and to not sort of, short circuit that by scolding or by disciplining or by giving loads of homework. I think just letting them enjoy, making sure that the love of a teacher-student relationship is kept alive. And finally, I think safety first, right? So no matter what they do, just I think social distancing and all forms of COVID prevention will be important, because, a lot of people are coming together and will go back home potentially, which could be challenging.
Yeah. Pranav, I think that was an important point that you mentioned, that the learning has to be structured according to the child's maybe cognitive ability. Yeah. So Gloria, just coming back to you, okay. Now there has been a shift to online classes, but I guess not every child has access to digital devices or the internet for whatever reason. So how do we ensure that children don't miss out on learning?
Well, I think, in that sense, the reality is quite bleak. Also because I primarily work with children living in childcare institutions, which is typically your orphanages and shelter homes. And we're already seeing massive disruptions in their education trajectory. They go to typically your government schools, where government schools obviously many of them haven't even started online classes. And even if online classes start, our children don't really have access to devices. So in a country like India, lack of access to technology is definitely a disruption, especially for children from financially difficult or disadvantaged backgrounds. And we're already seeing the outcomes of that. Like if you just look around, you see stats on children entering the child labor or labor market is going up. Right? You see, actually, in fact, in Bangalore, I see a lot more children back at traffic signals. They're all signs that, when a child is not in school, and especially if your family is dipping into poverty or entering financial crisis, the child also becomes a possible way to earn and not necessarily put to learn. But that said, I think at a time like this, where if you do not have access to digital devices, you still have access to your old school learning methods, which is setting up or making sure there's enough reading material for your children. Children, they do have their entire day free, which means that filling their day with giving them books that they could read, or going through textbooks that they would have otherwise learned in these 5 months of schooling that they are missing. It would require, I think, a lot of investment from the parent, because now the parent is also playing the role of a teacher. So it's become, the family structure is so much more important for children who don't really have access to even devices, which means a parent is playing both roles. And in India, the reality is that children are missing out on learning, and well, we're just hoping that there's minimal damage by the time schools reopen for those who don't really have access to internet.
Yeah. And continuing on the same thing, Pranav, what do you think the teachers need to do very differently? Because obviously, you're not sitting in class and saying be quiet and things, and you're teaching online. You don't know how many people are listening or not, or what can the teachers do to make sure their content is compelling?
Yeah, I think teachers are first of all not discriminating based on who has resources at home and who doesn't. Sort of just acknowledging that some students will have smartphones with internet, and not preventing them from learning. I mean, let that continue. At least those who have it, I think, should continue to learn from the devices they have. The government has started TV channels as well as radio channels for children who have those devices to be able to do that. It's possible for teachers to give printed material. These could be storybooks, it could be worksheets that students can take home, people who have no technology. So I think teachers will need to get comfortable with the fact that there will be very different solutions based on what's available and not available at home. So not only are all students at different learning levels, now they also have different access and ownership of some of these learning tools. And that's complex. I mean, let's all admit that even if any of us were in the position of a teacher, this wasn't an easy job before COVID, and now it's an even more complex job. So I think teachers should also, first of all, make sure that they are healthy, that they are comfortable with the fact that it's not about finishing the syllabus, but it's about helping every child learn from wherever they are and with whatever they have. Is what
Right. Right. And Tina, you want to? I think there are some audience questions. Do you want to take something?
Just to let everyone know who's watching, the stream's up on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube on Muthoot Inc. and Restart India's channel. So one of the audience questions that we've got is from Sarah. So what Sarah's asking is, my children are very young and now are spending a lot of time on technology. What is the appropriate amount of time I can let them use the computer? How can I balance physical exercise and technology access? Please give me some advice. Gloria, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. So I think here, just to kind of go back into a little bit of, I guess, what children would probably be going through at this point in time is there's a lot of change in their life. So one of the first things that I do is create a routine so that there's a predefined time that they actually would spend on the device, and that is preset. That's one. Also, a lot of time, young children especially spend on technology or learning content needn't necessarily be done alone. So the parent or the caregiver can sit with the child and interact with the content, or make it more conversational. So it is not just 100% to screen time. It is actually conversation with the child on what they see, and then it becomes a bit like a more learning would happen. So sit with your child, interact with the content, and basically also that will help increase the child's curiosity with the content as well. Third would probably be to plan the breaks. It probably is a part of routine, which is that you would have 2 hours at a certain time, take a break. And if it's young children, they would want to go around and do activities or have their playtime, and then come back onto their digital learning content. Also, 100% of their time needn't necessarily spend on the device. If I had young children, I would basically also ensure that I stock up on storybooks and reading material and activities that's actually fun and interesting to do, as long as a child is productively engaged. So yeah, I guess it boils down to a lot more involved parenting. So that's, I guess, the crux of this, what this would be, especially for young children.
And I think you can really bring about a structure in terms of the time spent. So even with adults, we're advised, when you do work in front of a system, spend 25 minutes doing your work, get up, walk, come, listen to some music, come back. That way you remain more productive instead of just, sitting there for a long time that you think you're spending, like, being productive there, but yeah, you kind of like get tired as well.
Exactly.
Sure.
I just want to quickly add that parents can actually play an incredible role in the learning, and also without using technology. For example, there are a lot of measuring vessels, right, which have sort of gradation in terms of what volume of liquid has been used. Parents can take their children to the market where they are buying, and just the fact that they have to collect change of a 100 rupee note can help them learn subtraction. They can help learn multiplication when they know the price of a vegetable and the amount of weight that they are purchasing. They can use simple measuring tapes to measure the heights of their siblings or their parents or other objects. So there are a lot of things at home that children can continue to learn. These are all very useful life skills. They're all real life examples, and all of this needs no technology, just needs an adult who is invested in their child's education.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, Pranav. So, Pranav, I remember, like, in one of our earlier conversations that you mentioned that, and this I thought was a really strong line, that delivery is not equal to absorption. So even if students have access to digital platforms for learning, but how do we really ensure that they are actually learning? Is there a way that we can measure the effectiveness of that learning?
Yeah, I think right now there is this whole fad of that something must be better than nothing, right? And so everybody has gotten into a delivery mode. Now, whether that's delivery through technology of watching videos on smartphones or TV serials or radio jingles, or sometimes even physical delivery of notebooks and all. And the mindset is that because you've delivered this, the child would have absorbed it on the other side. But absorption is when the child has understood it. So that's what I mean by when I'm saying that delivery is not equal to absorption. Now, how does one make sure that happens? The first step is to assess, right? Unless you are able to decide how much a child has learned, you wouldn't be able to do the next step. So we have made these foundational literacy and numeracy, which is essentially children up till grade 3, assessments where children can actually tell us whether they know counting of numbers, whether they recognize digits or letters or words or many of those things. Similarly, in advanced grades, you can have questions that check that. So a proper sequence would be to assess, understand the knowledge state, then provide material, then assess again to see how much have they learned. And this is what happens in the medical field, right? When you go see a doctor, they recommend you get some blood tests and x-rays. Then they sort of give you a medicine or a procedure, and then they do that assessment again afterwards to see if that medicine or that intervention had the effect or not. So similarly in education, I think an assessment followed by learning material, followed by assessments, and then keep on iterating on that would help absorption to increase as well.
Yeah. So Lakshmi, do you want to?
Yeah, and one of the things I've been thinking about is, I just want to pause for a second and say that, Pranav, one of the things that's very important that you brought out is in terms of our, the children, how they're learning and all that stuff. And it's sort of, what is it that we can do for the, sorry, Tina, you didn't, I'm going to do the audience question now, right? So, yeah. So I just want to ask an audience question to you, Pranav, which is from Rajiv Sharma in Punjab. He's saying, school and learning market is in bad shape. I mean, this is what he feels, is that school and learning market are in bad shape, and the basics are required for STEM, especially the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, all these things, and they're not being imparted. I mean, as you can imagine, now with this COVID and all that stuff, it's we can't do science experiments and all that stuff. They're not being imparted in general. And he's saying COVID-19 has put brakes on all development in education sector. So how can we create a new education market in India with higher reach, lower infrastructure cost, and large student base? And the other thing is that in India, we have what you call a variety of students, right? We have the really poor who can barely afford to go to the middle class, who go to some sort of a vernacular school, to the English medium. I mean, it's not one problem you're trying to solve, but he feels in general, the entire market is in a bad shape. Maybe I would propose to say not just in India, all over the world, it's in bad shape. So, what can we do to, with the technology, especially, how can we do higher reach and lower infrastructure cost and more children on the system?
Everybody is willing to pay for things that they see value in, right? I think the absorption of whether it's delivery apps or any of those things where people are seeing value, they're willing to pay. So I would actually say that the same thing applies here. What today we need to provide is high quality content that is based on pedagogy research, that has been proven to improve a child's learning. It helps if the software or the material it's contextualized to a child's language, to their surroundings. It's something that they actually benefit from, where they can discuss with their parents and siblings. I think when you are able to add value, you can capture a part of that value, and the monetization of that is possible. See, today, after Roti Kapda Makan, education is the number one sort of money, number one, space where parents spend money. So I think even post-COVID, parents still value education a lot after all the basic needs are met. So for me, I think it's just about providing highly researched quality product that actually helps children in learning things that are useful to parents also. So even if you are a farmer in a rural part of India, and your child is now able to tell you what the market price for your produce is, or even if you are a girl in urban part of India, and now you're able to sort of really get skills that are valued by employers. All of that, there is high parental willingness to pay. And so I would just focus on that. The mobile penetration rate, the smartphone ownership rate, the electricity, all of those things will, come to those parents as India sort of progresses. If you are an edtech entrepreneur, or if you are an education organization that's looking to do good work, there is a lot of room for you to do, and there is willingness for parents to pay for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, Pranav, you mentioned a good point that about parents willing to spend on their children's education, because even like in Muthoot, if we ask any segment of customers like why they're in why they're actually like doing the business that they're doing, the one single answer that stands out is to help my child study, like whatever the reason that they're earning for, it's to help my child study.
Yeah.
So, Gloria, I'll just shoot the next question to you. Children haven't really been going to school or interacting with their friends, but and maybe they've been affected psychologically, emotionally, and mentally. And you are in this childcare space. So, what can children themselves and their caregivers do to help them deal with this?
Yeah, so I think the first step is to kind of acknowledge the fact that this pandemic could potentially have a psychological impact on children. I think there are enough studies that have come out that it does, and it could. And so parents, the first step is for parents or caregivers to be aware of the impact of so much of change and so much of instability in a child's life. Be it, let's say, their schools closing, they have limited social interactions, they cannot move, their parents are at home the whole time. They, for some children, where going to school or moving around itself was a way to distract away from their other stressors in life. That avenue is shut. A lot of them who are physically active, their sports activities have been stopped. So it's a big change as far as a child is concerned, and obviously they can't possibly always make a lot of sense of this, so it could contribute to anxiety, stress, or even fear in children. And so I think us as adults or caregivers or parents, it's important to recognize that there is potentially this kind of an impact on our children. And one of the ways that a caregiver could look at this is to actually constantly have an open communication with their children of how are they feeling, how are they processing all the change that's going on, and in a lot of ways to try and bring in routine and stability to their daily lives. While us adults, we might stress out about, what's the world coming to, but as much as possible, try and, make it as stable and stress-free for our children. It could be, taking, and also, yeah, it could be taking them on a trip that they always wanted to go, planning this out in a manner that while, yes, school's closed and everything that a child knows is now different, how can I use this time to really bond, connect with my child, do things that I wouldn't have done otherwise, and really create happy memories to possibly offset some of the trauma that our children could be going through. So yeah, the key to this would probably be acknowledging that this exists and keeping open lines of communication with your child so that you're able to, help your child through whatever's going on.
Yeah.
And I think what you said is very important, Gloria. We are thinking about the education system, the teachers, the degrees and all that stuff. But when you think of the child, what the child is going through, not being able to go out and play with their friends, having to wear a mask every time you go out, sit in front of a screen and look at it. I mean, how much stress they must be going through, right? So if we can give them, I mean, I always used to say in our house that, okay, we are saving on 3 hours of sitting in traffic. So what can we do together in those 3 hours? We started listening to audiobooks together, or just, play carom board, or, just something we can do so the child also gets some mental free time, so I think it's very important what you're saying. And in continuing that, next is question to both of you is that, in some ways, we could hyperventilate by saying, oh my God, my child has lost a year in school. For example, a lot of people who are my neighbors, their kids who are supposed to go off to college in US, they're not going. They're saying, if I don't need to go and if I don't have the opportunity to go to a campus, why sit in front and do something in screen? I'll take a gap year. Or in schools, you just, suddenly last year, they just said that there are no final exams. So whatever tests you've done so far, that's the result. So, there is such a fear in parents' minds, or they worry that, oh my God, my child is going to lose a year in school. How do we look at the situation a little differently and not feel this panic? I'd love for both of you to answer.
Pranav, would you want to take that first?
Yeah.
I think, Lakshmi, I think we'll all live on average 70, 80 years, right? I think 1 year is just a little more than 1% of our lives. I would essentially turn it on its head and take it as an advantage, right? What if you were forced to take a break, to reflect, to think, to experiment? And I think this is a fabulous time for that, right? Like, take a walk in the garden and explore the different flowers, run a hobby at home, look up some things, do things, because nobody's going to ask you what you did this year, right? And you could actually run a lot of experiments, decide what you're truly interested in, and also what you don't like to do, and shut that door to help narrow down towards what you might want to do in your career. And I think that's equally relevant for a 7-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 47-year-old, right? I think all of them can benefit from just taking a pause, reflect, explore interests. And, this 1 year actually could be a blessing in disguise, rather than stressing about that you're behind some imaginary race.
Yeah. Gloria?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way to handle this, given the fact that there isn't, everything that can be done to control the situation is being done, and just to trust and embrace where we are right now. And in a lot of ways, when I, think about caregivers and parents or their children, I think, like Pranav said, this actually is a blessing. It's like an extended summer vacation, or that time that you wouldn't otherwise get with your children or with your family. So thinking about what's the best you can make out of this year, because at the end of the day, this 1 year blip is not going to be much when you look back. and you'll actually probably be happy that you've done everything possible in this 1 year that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to. So how do we change this? Yeah, struggle into an opportunity.
I must agree with both of you and share a bit of our own experiences that since we stayed at home for 5 months now, I mean, pretty much since March, we haven't left home, right? So my son has slowly been talking about, what is the purpose of this education? He's in 10th grade, he was in 10th grade. So it's sort of, he says, I want to play football. Why should I study biology? Why should I study chemistry? Why should I study all these things? And we were, at the end of the day, very traditional parents. I mean, we don't know anything else, right? We're like, just finish the school and then we'll see what you want to do. But he's argued his way through these 5 months and told us that if I want to go into it, I need to do it sooner than later. I don't want to wait for 2 more years. That's too much of a, downtime for me. And he's convinced us to take him out of a traditional school and put him in a football school, which we would have never done. We kept telling him, finish your 12th grade and then we'll see. But because of this time, because we were spending time together, because we had the opportunity to discuss it and fight about it and argue and present various opinions and all that stuff, I never thought I would do this, of pulling my child out of a traditional school. I mean, luckily he went to a traditional school that was also very, very alternative. But I think you're right that if we can use this opportunity to let our kids speak to us, because we are always talking to them, if they let them speak, it'd be really good. And I mean, on one hand, yes, maybe we're a little privileged. We can say, okay, stop this, do this. But I think there is opportunities available at every level. So maybe Pranav, tell a little bit about how technology can bring the necessary skill sets or the education in the vernacular needs of the students.
Yeah, and I think, Lakshmi, the beauty of technology is that it can do this far better than humans. So let me give you an example. In the city of Mumbai, in a government school, you will actually have students who are studying in Marathi, in Hindi, in Gujarati, in Tamil, and Urdu, right? Okay. Because there are norms when you have a population of more than a certain level, you have to cater to that language of instruction. Now, you can definitely try to recruit so many teachers who are adept at both the subject and the language in a city like Mumbai and make it happen, but it's very difficult. And most often there are many vacancies. Now, it is possible for one to have software in those vernacular languages. So we actually have MindSpark in about 9 different vernacular languages. And it's possible that in the same school, children are learning at 6 different languages, at 9 different learning levels, at more than 100 variations of any of those. Now, the few things we've learned when we have contextualized from English to a vernacular language, one is that you can't simply take a Little Red Riding Hood and just do a voiceover translation. It's important for you to contextualize it. So pick up a local folk tale or a folk story that then, when it's put in there, it's also something that allows them to talk to their friends and family members about. The second thing is put images of objects that they would have seen. So for example, while we use pizza for our private school students, we actually use roti in Rajasthan government schools, and we use a dosa in Andhra Pradesh government schools, right? Because those are objects that they have seen, they have eaten, they have worked with. And that kind of contextualization is important. This is in addition to names of the people. And another example is for volume. We could use swimming pool for urban private school, but then we would use other forms of tumblers and different objects that measure volume. So this is important because the more the child is able to relate to those objects, to those words, to those stories, the chances that they're engaged and learning from that, back to the point on absorption, is going to be that much higher. This isn't easy. I mean, we have actually struggled because every language is so rich, so unique, so nuanced, and people who are bilingually fluent in that is a very rare thing. But we're at it, and there's a lot of global research that shows this is productive. So whether France and Germany, when they were thinking about French, German versus English, or Canada, when it was thinking about English versus German, we actually also did a study for schools in India. We found that at least until grade 5, they need to get content in the mother tongue language or the state language of instruction. And English can always be an add-on to that for the fastest learning. And once they're proficient in one language, they can pick up many other languages, like each of us, right? Once we have mastered one language, we could pick up a second and third language much more easily. But in the absence of that, if you're just bombarded with 2 languages at the same time, your learning actually slows down.
That's actually like good information for educators, and something to keep in mind for India. Like when you think about India, is actually a continent in like a country, because there's so many languages in so many states.
Yeah.
And
so
I
do
would
you want to
also
ask
say,
an audience question, Tina, so we can wrap up after that?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Sorry, Pranav, were you saying something? I interrupted. Sorry. Were you saying something?
I'm just saying, it's not just languages, but then you get into dialects. I mean, someone in Dungarpur in Rajasthan is actually speaking Rahasya at home, speaking Hindi in the market, is studying in a third language in a school, and the tribal could be a fourth, right? And so that complexity is really rich but challenging when it comes to
Yeah, that's true. So Gloria, I think this audience question can go to you. So this is from Pooja. So Pooja's asking something on like India's workforce. Though India has a young workforce, many of them may be inadequately trained to enter work, and very few women actually enter the workforce. What, in your opinion, are the main skills needed to equip this generation of workers?
So to begin with, I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks actually, which is about women entering the workforce, and I kind of think that one of the advantages of remote work is the fact that it has equalized the job market a bit for young mothers or women who had actually taken a break and was looking to enter the workforce, because now almost everybody is working from home. So, before, if let's say you had a family to take care of, that would have in a lot of ways gone against a woman being hired. I'd like to believe that some of that has actually been equalized, and we probably will see trends of more women joining the workforce now that they can actually work from home, and take care of their children and do, and be the family person that a lot of us women do as well. Apart from that, in terms of skills, this is again, I'm saying this from having worked with volunteers, young college students, and some of our youth from that are graduating out of childcare institutions. I think if this continues, one of the skills that definitely would be required would be knowledge on how to operate digital devices, more exposure to how to operate from a laptop, or how to operate a smartphone on one side. A lot of if logistics and delivery and supply chain, all of that is the way to go, given that we're not going to move a lot more, but everything is going to get delivered to our doorsteps, which means that there could be a higher demand for telecallers, higher demand for your deliveries. That section seems to also be booming. You can just see by the way Swiggy or a lot of the deliveries companies are doing at the moment. So from a skills point of view, definitely knowing or having access to digital devices, or just knowing how to operate digital devices, would give you an edge. Also, now I already feel handicapped for not knowing coding. I think knowing coding has now become a lot like how learning English was before. So a lot of younger children, especially young children in schools, or children who are just graduating out of colleges, picking up learning coding really quickly would also be a useful skill to have. There's been a lot of content that's coming up as organizations are changing their way of work, which is distributed work, and which means that you don't necessarily need to be in a certain geography to be able to plug into the same office. Interestingly, that just means that hiring and recruiting could change. I could be in Bangalore and be working with somebody in New York, right? And vice versa. So it's just completely changed the way that people could be hired and recruited and working. So I'm really excited to see how this would evolve, but I do think that there is some bit of democratization that will come up, and possibly even a lot of young college students who would take up part-time work because they could just do it after college hours, which otherwise would not have been possible because you would have to show up physically at an office building. So it's exciting times, and I think we're quite poised for some of the transformations that will be required coming up.
Like
Great. So thank you so much, Gloria and Pranav. There's been some amazing insights, especially about thinking about the mental well-being of the child more than anything else, and then the ability for a digital education to take us to multiple languages. There's so many opportunities. So thank you so much for your time. Tina, on to you for wrapping up.
Thank you, Gloria and Pranav. I think this conversation mostly helped bust some myths with respect to the fears that have been in people's minds. With anything related to education and where we're going with all of this. So thank you so much for being with us tonight, and thank you to everyone who's watched this live event, Restart India Live. Please continue to visit our website, www.restartindia.in, and all our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for exciting updates and resources that can help you. And of course, do ask us your questions and we'll get our mentors to answer. All right. Thank you and good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Goodbye.